All right, greetings, corporeal beings. I am the one they call Claire.
My name is Naya. Thank you for coming to Comcast's Democracy 2020 Political Ad Zoom screening.
Comcast is a 2-year program for juniors and seniors centered around film and graphic design. It is led by our 3 wonderful teachers, Miss Sal, Mr. Doherty, and Mr. Parrish.
We usually work in groups, but this year the pandemic prevented that. We managed to work around it by having each individual make their own video.
In September, we began research on current propositions and issues. Based on our research, we began planning and constructing 30 or 60-second political ads on our assigned topics.
Each student chose an issue and was assigned a pro or con viewpoint. Because of this, not every issue has both sides represented, though we did try.
In making these ads, students learned to develop skills including research, editing, camera work, script writing, and storyboarding.
The purpose of these ads is to inform our community, not to push any sort of political agenda.
These ads are not representative of student views. Some students may have made a political ad expressing a viewpoint they do not agree with.
After each video, you'll get the chance to ask questions in the Q&A, which will then be answered by our filmmakers.
There are actually 7 breaks in the reel for you to pause and come back to the webinar to ask questions in the Q&A, and then you can ask the questions. We'll watch the videos via the YouTube link and return to the webinar for your questions.
Have fun, learn things, and enjoy the show.
Have fun, guys.
"2020, a year where we need to use all we have to fight against COVID-19. Every woman, every man, and every dollar. In a year where our resources are already spread thin. Don't spread them thinner. Vote no on Prop 14.
Good evening, California. I have some terrible news to inform you about. Because of Proposition 13, big businesses are saving their tax dollars, which would be the funding for our schools, for our education. This means that most schools are not getting the necessary funding they need for classes like the arts. I repeat, the arts are being defunded. This is Lady Proposition 15 to tell you about how she's going to help us.
I have a 3-step plan. I'm going to start by closing all the property tax loopholes, cutting small business taxes in half, and making sure that all the local schools and communities are getting the proper funding that they need.
Thank you, Lady Prop 15.
And I am here to grant thee with the power to play and do the arts once again.
Thank you, Lady Prop 15.
Go forth into the future with pride and spirit.
For just a moment, I want you to see life as a race. A race towards education, employment, good health, and family dynamics. Not everybody starts this race at the same point. Some people start with advantages, like access to tutors or private education. Or were given the privilege of available transportation to and from school. Or had nutritious and healthy food put on the table every night. It's obvious that some will reach the finish line before others. Vote yes on Prop 19. Reinstate affirmative action in California to aid minority groups in getting the support they need to be successful.
I'm voting for.
As of June 2020, 18 states allow 17-year-olds to vote in the primary election if they'll be old enough to vote in the general. California is not one of them. Make a difference for today's youth and vote yes on Prop 18.
Don't mute my voice.
These young citizens of America are lining up to vote for the general election. Due in 5 months, it'll affect their communities and decide what propositions will be chosen. Yet, these young men and women can't vote. Why? All because they are 5 months away from voting age. They will unfairly have to live with the decisions of people 5 months older than them. Vote yes on Prop 18. Tomorrow's voice is today.
Oh my god, look at this meme of Biden. It makes it look like he has dementia.
Wow, I would never vote for that old man. At least Trump remembers what he says.
Kidding me? Have you done any research to back that meme up?
Duh, it's right here. You probably have dementia too, Dom. We shouldn't listen to anything you say. You're just like this senile old man.
You two are idiots. I'm so glad you can't vote yet.
Actually, we'll be 18 during the general election, so we'll be voting for Trump.
Yeah, we're gonna vote for him in the primaries. Both our dads said we should.
Kids all over America ages 10 to 18 are getting fake news sourced from social media and other untrustworthy websites. These platforms are untrustworthy because these sites are public domains. Anyone can post what they want, and teens will notice shocking statements that catches their eye and think it's the truth. Don't let the uninformed youth influence the election.
Each time she watches this video showing a Lee County deputy pointing his weapon at her family. Oh my God! And arresting her teenage daughter. It happened.
What is Proposition 21? Prop 21 expands local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. You may or not be thinking this is a good idea, but let me educate you on why to vote no on Prop 21. Rent control policies make it more difficult to evict tenants. This is a serious problem because these policies can be problematic if there is a legitimate need for eviction. Rent control policies also don't always take into account how changes in property taxes can burden landlords with rent-controlled units.
Dude, guess what? Amelia's dad is an Uber driver, right? Well, apparently during a ride, him and the passenger noticed that the app started glitching and it took him onto the wrong entrance of the freeway. He got into a head-on collision and the passenger died.
Oh my god, are you serious?
Yes, dude, and get this. It's considered all his fault and he has to pay for all the damage even though the app started glitching.
How is that possible?
Because Prop 22, dude. Companies like Uber can eliminate certain employee benefits all because Prop 22 reclassified app-based drivers as independent contractors instead of as employees. So he's not going to receive workers' compensation or anything even though he was on the job. Amelia and her family could lose everything because of this.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
If Proposition 22 is approved, rideshare companies will legally be allowed to exploit employees, slip past the laws, and destroy lives. Vote no to Prop 22 before it's too late.
By getting rid of cash bail, we open ourselves up to danger. A risk-based assessment aims to put more criminals back on the street where they can continue committing crimes and have no incentive to attend their trial.
We need to prioritize the safety of our communities over the freedom of potential felons. Protect the ones you love. Vote no on Prop 25.
Finland is thought to have the best K-12 education system in the world. The Finnish government has put a lot of effort and funds specifically into pre-college education, and it has paid off. In Finland, 93% of students graduate from high school, the highest in the world, and 17.5% higher than in the US. It's clear that they're doing something right, and experts have found exactly what that is: decreased class sizes. According to a study from Harvard, smaller classes did bring substantial improvement in early learning in cognitive subjects, such as reading and arithmetic. This will allow schools the funds needed to move towards reduced class sizes and create a better education for future generations to come.
Probably don't need this hammer. We can use it as, right?
Factory farms are pushed to their limits, forced to produce untold quantities of low-priced meat, struggling to keep up with the demand of a population that is expecting ever cheaper meat. Farmers First provides a solution. By allowing farmers to set a minimum price for meat, competition between farmers will be reduced, thereby focusing more upon improving factory conditions and quality of life for its livestock. If the price of meat is higher, people will eat less meat, improving the overall health of people and planet without costing the jobs and livelihoods of farmers.
Imagine waking up one morning to find that the average price of many foods had increased by nearly a multiple of 2. That steak you had last night, instead of being worth $5, is now worth 10 to 15. A loaf of bread costs as much as it does to fill up your car. This is the reality without factory farming.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
41-year-old Daniel Prude was naked and yelling when officers handcuffed him in the early hours of March 23rd.
Don't move.
Yes, sir. You can see one officer press Prude's covered head to the ground until his body goes limp.
This altercation began because Daniel was in an unstable mental state and his brother called the police to try to get help. Unfortunately, this is not a rare occurrence. Police officers are often asked to do things that they were not trained for, and this creates an unsafe situation for themselves and for others. On top of this, for every dollar that goes into the NYPD and corrections, 29 cents goes to homeless services, 25 cents goes to Department of Health, 19 cents goes to housing preservation and development, 12 cents goes to youth and community development, and only 1 cent goes into workforce investment. We need to relocate these funds to pay professionals to deal with these issues.
Our
society, as we know it, is held together by a sense of law and order. You may have heard of the concept of a thin blue line, that blue line being law enforcement officers maintaining the peace and keeping the rest of us from spiraling into chaos. The defunding of the police would not only hinder police operations, but would also mess with the ability to maintain convicted prisoners. Crime rates would surge. Civil unrest would be at an all-time high. As humans, it's in our nature to desire civility and security in our lives. The defunding of the police, for a reallocation of funding, would surely work directly against that. The already given benefits of having an institutionalized police force outweigh the benefits of tearing it to the ground. For example, you may find yourself in this situation. What will you do then? Well, it's a good thing I know who to call. Don't allow our police to be defunded. The stability of society rides on them.
I'm Joe Holy, and I approve of this message.
Breaking news. The first death from coronavirus here in the United States. A man in his 50s dying from COVID-19 infection in Washington state.
Today, health officials in Washington state announced 4 new deaths, bringing the total to 6, all in the Seattle area.
The United States surpassed 500 deaths from the virus in a single day.
Today, the United States reported 1,000 deaths from COVID-19.
Over 2,980 deaths.
19,600 reported victims.
50,000 people.
More than 100,000 lives in America.
More than 138,000 deaths. 150,000.
As we come on the air tonight, more than 200,000 people in the U.S. have now been killed by the virus. 200,000 lives lost, 200,000 stories left unfinished.
Are you going to be voting this year? I'm a little worried about your asthma, Grandpa.
Tammy, I'm dying to vote, but I don't want to die voting. So I did my research, and I learned that because of the COVID situation, anyone can vote by mail in California. Well, you can help me out, Tammy.
How so?
Well, Tammy, I could sure use a ride tomorrow to get this ballot mailed in.
In 2016 through 2018, the Washington Post studied 5 states which all voted solely by mail. The resulting rates of fraudulent votes ranged from as low as 0.0014% in Colorado in 2016 to as high as 0.004% in Washington in 2018.
I can't thank you enough, Tammy. My voice, my vote. Of course.
In the 2016 election, 1.8 million dead people were registered to vote. With universal mail-in voting, they would have all been sent ballots that could have been used by anyone. Tell your representatives that you are not okay with universal mail-in voting.
Yeah, I know who's going to be the president. Wait, wasn't that guy already in here once? Yeah, I think so.
Next. ID, please. Next. ID, please.
Confederate statues have long been a symbol of white supremacy in the States. Mainly constructed during the Jim Crow era, their purpose was publicly advertised as memorials to fallen Confederate soldiers, but in reality, it was to push sympathy for the Confederate ideology. In this day and age, it makes sense to tear down these statues, right? Not necessarily. True, these statues honor the Confederates, and we shouldn't honor traitors to the Union. However, as proposed by Michael Signer, the former Democratic mayor of Charlottesville, by adding more plaques of detailed information and building monuments of civil rights figures around these statues, we can take away that honor and contextualize them as a whole. Additionally, there are those among the African American population who feel that censoring and taking down these statues is just another example of whitewashing history, because it's not pretty to see our dark roots and to remove the faces of those that perpetrated it. Let's reuse these statues and negate their original purpose. What better way to stick it to white supremacists than to take their very product and turn it against them?
Friends, delegates, and fellow Americans, I humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the President of the United States.
The California Initiative process, while it was originally intended to promote direct democracy and bypass the influence of corruption and corporate interests, it is more vulnerable to corruption than ever before, and propositions can have unintentional consequences. The best example of this was Proposition 13 passed in 1978, and while it froze the increase on your property taxes, it incentivized you to not sell your home. These taxes funded everything from infrastructure and road maintenance to public K-12 and community colleges. Another example is Proposition 8 passed in 2008 to eliminate the right of same-sex people to marry, which was helped won in the final weeks of the election via donations from various religious groups in Utah, with the single highest donation of $1 million from a bishop named Alan Ashton. Any local state process whose elections are vulnerable to wealthy out-of-state donors with direct ties to the church begin to sound less and less like its original intent of direct democracy.
The California Initiative process is an employment of direct democracy that we have used since 1911. We use it to make great major changes for our everyday lives. Since starting in 1911, we've seen 354 initiatives be submitted by citizens. Examples of these are Proposition 13 and Proposition 140. With the initiative process, we've been able to steadily move towards the future. This current year, 46 ballot initiatives have been filed, and in the past 20 years, we've seen an upwards trend in the initiatives put to California voters. The initiative process does, however, face opposition. Attacks have been made against it, and there are some in support of the idea to even get it abolished. Taking away the initiative process would take away our means towards the future. Support the initiative process.
These Americans are sitting here in their redskin attire, not being sensitive to how much that term hurts the Native Americans. They drink their liquor, while Native Americans suffer with the highest rate of alcoholism of any population. They wear great Native American chiefs, while their ancestors invaded their land, killing over 90% of all the Native population. We should not be wearing this sportswear. Native Americans never gave these teams permission to use their culture. The majority of Native Americans are deeply hurt and offended by the choices of these sports teams. Sports teams must not be named after Native Americans.
For years, people have been trying to get rid of Native American team names. Getting rid of these names would not only be costly for the associations burdened with the task of completely rebranding themselves, but it would also be erasing the history that these teams have worked so hard to achieve. Countless World Series, Super Bowl, and Stanley Cup wins, all gone. An article by the Washington Post states that 9 out of 10 Native Americans aren't offended by the Washington football team's previous name.
Look, I know that you're trying to be all PC or whatever, but those people actually commit more crimes.
That's terrible. Think of the suffering of those families.
You don't know what you're talking about. Those people are leeches to our society. They should get out and stay out.
Virginia's governor declared a state of emergency in Charlottesville today as white nationalists clashed in the streets with counter-protesters. Groups including the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazi.
I'd say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
Right,
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
What the fudge?
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
When we see things like this happen, it can be easy to lash out, to call for change and say what they should have done. But we have to remember that hindsight is 20/20. In tough situations where there is no clear decision to make, what would you do? In 1967, qualified immunity was created by the Supreme Court in order to protect government officials from lawsuits in situations where there is no clear legal process written down. It helps give government officials a higher degree of flexibility when making quick decisions. But if qualified immunity is removed, police officers could be too afraid to take any actions due to fear of prosecution, and instead not do anything. If there is ever a vote to abolish qualified immunity for your police officers, make the right choice and vote to protect qualified immunity.
Today's students are experiencing record levels of depression and anxiety. The suicide rate among children aged 10 to 17 has increased by 70% between 2006 and 2016. Despite this, 14 million students are in schools with police officers, but no counselors, nurses, psychologists, or social workers. Data shows that schools that invest in mental health resources see improved attendance rates, better academic achievement, and higher graduation rates, as well as lower rates of suspension, expulsion, and other disciplinary incidents. And yet funding for police in schools is on the rise, while public schools are experiencing a critical shortage of counselors, nurses, psychologists, and social workers. The glaring deficit creates a dangerous combination that is the central reason for our most vulnerable students being funneled into the school-to-prison pipeline.
Schools in California currently don't have the necessary resources or space to safely resume in-person instruction. The average classroom size at our school, for example, is 20 to 25 students. We wouldn't be able to fit every kid in a classroom or space while maintaining the 6 feet distance required. Classes might be held outdoors, however, there are other safety concerns such as class sizes, campus space, and teacher safety. Students who are unable to attend in-person classes due to pre-existing health conditions would be left behind their peers and would be disadvantaged. While in-person instruction is preferred and the best for students to learn, we don't have the resources or facilities to safely allow students back onto the campus.
Did you know that 2 out of 3 pennies are never seen in circulation again? Every household has that jar of useless change. Write your representative. Let them know it's time to eliminate the penny. But hey, that's just my 2 cents.
They're making us take ethnic studies this year.
I know, it's so annoying. My counselor said that I can have a free period. It's my senior year and I can have a free period.
Hey, did you hear they're making ethnic studies a graduation requirement?
Yeah, my mom told me last night.
Yeah, I think people will be a lot less ignorant after taking it.
People that didn't get to learn about their ancestry at home will be able to at school now.
Yeah, I hope so.
Hey Mom, remember that ethnic studies class that I have to take to graduate? Someone made a petition to get rid of it.
Well, that's good. That class really didn't have anything to do with you anyway, so I don't see why you'd have to take it. I can go sign.
Okay.
Mom, the petition got enough signatures. I'm not going to take the class. I was so excited.
I'm sorry, sweetie.
Children today have a more difficult time in school than generations past. With more new requirements and more new information than ever before, it's becoming too much for our children to handle. Between 2007 and 2017, depression rates have gone up by 59% within the youth. The government of California wants to require ethnic studies in high school. This sounds smart until it's your child who can't take it anymore.
Just this summer alone, there were over 2,200 cases at San Quentin. California should continue its releasing of prisoners from San Quentin who are nonviolent offenders with less than a year left in their sentence to minimize the immense spread of COVID-19 in its facility, which harms not only prisoners but staff and the general public.
Limiting the spread of coronavirus is behind some new emergency rules for California courts. Effective immediately, bail will be set at 0 for all misdemeanor and low-level felony cases.
From a machete-wielding man to accused carjackers, repeat suspects are being arrested and released under California's new zero-cash bail policy.
A gentleman that was out about 37 minutes out of jail that went on to commit 2 carjackings.
If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me and you'd be absolutely right. If an opening comes in the last year of President Trump's term and the primary process is started, we'll wait till the next election. Being the judiciary.
You're on the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Hold the tape. I want you to use my words against me.
Remember, sweetie, to stay away from anyone who's sick or coughing or anything like that, okay, Pumpkin? And always wear your mask.
Okay, sweetie, have a great day at school and remember to keep your mask on.
Honey, could I talk to you for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. Well, as you know, your father and I are very against vaccines, and now you have to get the COVID vaccine to go back to school. You know what that means for you, right? Your father and I have decided to homeschool you, so you don't have to get the vaccine. We just don't want to take that risk. I know you've been looking forward to seeing your friends and teachers again, but this is a
we do nothing, the studies have a range of between 20 and 40% of American jobs subject to automation in the next 20 to 30 years, which is not that much time, and that's a lot of jobs. If we don't make this kind of move, truck driving gets automated, the malls close, the call centers get replaced by bots and software. Every fast food restaurant you go into by 2021 is going to have the self-serve kiosk.
Universal basic income, the idea, money for nothing and chicks for free.
Now I like to call it free money for everyone.
$10,000 to every citizen of the US per year. This sounds like a dream, the world's dream. But the issue isn't where the money is going. The issue is where it's coming from. The US spends $4.4 trillion yearly. With UBI, it would be spending an extra $3.3 trillion. That's a 75% increase. The US can't afford that.
So the students have studied how to, their propositions. So if anyone's confused about the propositions, they can answer that. They can also answer any questions about the learning process or the making process of the videos.
Tom Asher says, great videos so far, everyone. Hamish McPhail says, did you choose which prop to do? Anybody can answer that.
Yeah, we were given, I'm not in this group, but we were given a list of different propositions, and it was kind of just first come, first serve. And you could choose one that you were interested in or one that you wanted to learn more about. And there was definitely a wide variety. So there was different propositions you could lean towards. And of course, there's the different sides.
Philip says, I'm just curious as to what the process was and for the seniors, how it differed from the group videos last year.
For me, how it differed from last year. The main thing is last year we were working in teams. And this year we were working on our own. And so that was helpful because you could kind of choose your own creative path, but it was also difficult because you didn't have as much help. That was the main thing. And less resources, so being more creative.
Tristan Bottle, the same person, or Bodle, says, to what degree do you think political ads actually work? Do they really persuade people? Is there any evidence? Anybody who knows about this?
I mean, I don't have any statistical evidence to back it up, but I feel like there's so many things on a ballot that you can't, like, people don't research every single thing on a ballot. So when you come by a political ad on TV saying, vote yes for Prop 22, I don't know. When you have something that says vote yes, it's kind of one-sided because that's how political ads work. It definitely will sway people. I don't have evidence to back that up, but I feel like it definitely would be. And, as I'm watching some of these here, like, some of them are pretty convincing to me, to the point where even I would be like, huh, that actually is a good idea, or huh, that's a bad idea, So, yeah.
May I add to that, actually? With most advertising, if you see like a toothpaste commercial, you're not going to go out instantly to go buy that toothpaste. But it places an idea in your mind, and you recognize, the logo or the emblem. I'm thinking crest, and then when I go to the store, I'm like, oh, they're good. It's subconscious, really. And so when you go on your ballot, not knowing about something, you could say, oh, I've heard Tom Haverford's name before. He sounds trustworthy, or Prop something or other, and you say, oh, yes to that. Sounds good.
Kirsten Asher says, what is the alternative to the current bail system outlined in Prop 25?
I can answer that. I had Prop 25. So the alternative to a cash bail system would be a risk-based assessment, which is pretty much just a computer algorithm that a person's information and history is all put into, and then it's determined if they're a public safety risk or not. And then based on that, if they are a public safety risk, then they will be put in jail, but if they're not, they're allowed to go.
I'd kind of like to add to that. I was for Prop 25, and it's basically about, you can choose, they look at your history as a criminal, and you know, if you're committed so many murders or something and you seem like a really severe criminal, then you're going to be held in jail a little bit longer, you know, before you're not going to like be able to pay bail pretty much. If it's a minor crime like stealing something or vandalism, you'll be able to get released before your trial because your, you know, public safety risk, you know, is not as bad.
But wasn't there some questions that, like, within the algorithm that there was some racial bias was shown?
Yeah, that is something that was brought up, and I did research that, and that is super interesting. Yeah, Erin, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, so pretty much with an algorithm, like at first it seems like it would be non-biased, but then if you think, well, what are these algorithms based on? Like, how are you determining in a justice system that's already super biased against minorities? Like, that's going to factor into the algorithm, like, either way. So, like, it's still a pretty biased system, even though it is a computer.
Yeah, like it has been proven actually that Twitter's AI was racist and would flag people based on their race often.
Awesome discussion. Real quick before we go back to the video, Erin, can you tell us about your animation style and process, because people are curious and we want to know.
Yeah, it was actually pretty simple. Like, I did a really quick storyboard and then I actually animated it in Photoshop, and I hand drew every one of the frames. So it took kind of a while. I think in the end there was like 1,200 frames, but I mean, I like the way it turned out. So yeah.
Ooh, okay. A question from Patrick Donahue. These are great. Can any of you talk about striking the right balance between delivering data and conveying emotion?
Sure. I have a sort of thing that I went through with that, because as a person, I tend to be a bit too wordy when it comes to arguments. So I've found when it comes to showing emotion and data at the same time, your best friend is brevity. And it's better to phrase things in short, striking ways than to be overly explaining, you know? Because if you're trying to make a point, right, what I just tried to come up to was give them the information that if it like strikes them, they can look into it themselves and not get super into the weeds of like, this thing's called this thing's named after this guy. You know, what really matters is those emotional points. So I try to use just the amount of data necessary to support those, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
To build off of what Dexter said, like, I feel like some sort of statistic that's like very easy to quote, like something that's like easy, like a catchphrase that includes a statistic, that's kind of catchy too.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Michelle Hickson. What do you personally think should be done with the Confederate monuments?
Okay, so I'd like to speak on this one. You know, when I was doing a lot of research for my article, by the way, I was against, mine was talking about we should keep them up. When I was really delving into the research and just trying to come up with my own personal opinion and also try to find a way to turn it into, no, we should take them down. I really liked Michael Signer's idea of like recontextualizing these statues. You know, I feel like the argument of taking them down, I don't think it's erasing history. We're still going to learn about the Confederacy in school and stuff like that. But to counterpoint that, we learned, like last year, we learned about the Confederacy in school for like a week and a half. Like that's not a lot. You scrape the surface and you don't really know the depths of it. And I feel like if you want to say, let's move the statues into a museum or something, uh, in honesty, how many people really go to history museums anymore? Unless you have a passion for history, you're just not going to go to them. And so that kind of thing will remain to be unseen. So I think if we take these things that are already in the public, in the open, you can just walk by and read what's on them. I think that could really deliver a really strong message, you know? Um, of course, as I'm going through, like, as I'm looking through like the hundreds and hundreds of statues, there's so many that are just completely glorifying the Confederacy, and like it's so hard to argue my perspective when you just see to our great heroes of the Confederacy, you know, like that, like it's so hard to argue my point.
Yeah, I was for removing them, and I agree actually very much with the point just made. My biggest thing to the erasure of history argument, which is a favorite among people who don't have a good argument, because Confederate monuments existing in their current state in many ways is an erasure of history all on its own, because it's made to tell a one-sided story that's much more palatable to most people. So I totally agree. I personally think best case scenario is for them to be in museum, right? If we have to like melt them down or whatever and make a bunch of thumbtacks, I guess that's fine. But ideally you want to preserve art even if it's made by people who didn't do good things, you know, and provide the history for it. And I think it is a good compromise to have inscriptions associated with it that tell the full story.
Yeah, and